Hello and welcome to the garden. So I've got some winter work to do, and one of the jobs is to transform this old polytunnel frame into a fruit cage. At the moment it is the world's most useless fruit cage, as there is no netting and there's no door. So I need to get this covered and I need to make a door. I think what I'll probably do down the central part of this frame is get some soft bird netting from somewhere of an appropriate size. I think this is 10 meters long, so I should be able to get a 10 meter length that will just cover this. But along the sides, I'd like to put something more robust, and I've got some wire mesh that came off of the old kitchen garden fence before the new fence went up. Now it's not in perfect condition, but I think it'll do fine for a fruit cage, so I'd like to reuse some of that and at least get one layer of that around the entire cage. I'd like probably to go over the entirety of the back with that mesh, probably the whole of the front, and somewhere here I need to make a door of some sort. So this is a good job for winter. It's going to take me some weeks to get around to finishing all of that, but I thought I might as well make a little start today. And actually the first job, I think, is to trim off some loose ends on the trellis here. So I've got this reinforcing mesh all over the garden. I've been trying it out for trellising. It's really good stuff. As you can see, I wired on a couple of little bottles there to just protect our eyes from these sticking out bits, and it would be a good idea now to trim these down and get rid of those, because I don't like them sticking out here at all. Now this stuff, this can be cut really easily with an angle grinder with a cut-off disc in it, but if you happen to have a pair, bolt croppers are much better. It's so much easier and safer to cut with. If you've ever been using an angle grinder when a disc is broken, you'll know what I mean. It's not very nice. These fellows here, they're a little bit over the top. When I was buying these, I was thinking primarily of leverage, and yeah, these are good levers. So cutting through thin wire like this, it's like cutting through butter. The only problem is these weigh a ton. I really wasn't thinking about that aspect of it when I ordered these, but I can just go along here now and shorten all of those bits that are sticking out. When the mesh is in place, of course, we wouldn't be able to get our head around here, but these are sticking out beyond the face here, so they do need to be shortened, and I've got to do that at the other ends too. Now they also stick up a bit here, just beyond the profile of the frame, but I don't know. I think I'm going to leave those for now, because I think the mesh, whatever we cover this with, it'll probably just go over those spikes, and I can leave them. I don't think there's any chance of stabbing ourselves in the eyeball with those. So otherwise I'll have to go along the entire row chopping those off, and that would be a bit of a chore. So I will leave those for now. So this is the stuff I'm going to put at least around the bottom of the fruit cage. I could, of course, put some soft mesh over the whole thing, but I've got this old mesh from our previous fence, and I've kept it for now. Some of it's a little bit ratty. This is one of the better pieces. Of course, it's been installed for quite some years, so it's not perfect. There are some small holes in places, but not the sort of hole that a bird is going to get through, I think. So it's not bad. It's reasonably stiff, which is nice. And I think it's probably going to be a good idea to have at least some wire mesh on the bottom part of the fruit cage. Much less likely to put a hole in it accidentally with a tool or something like that. So I've got wooden boards down the bottom running along the edge here, and I'll be able to pin this mesh to it. So I can run the mesh over the outside of those boards and tack it in place. I could also maybe screw a batten in to these baseboards, and that would clamp this mesh very nicely, in fact, and I might do that at some point. I don't have suitable batten at the moment, so I'm not going to do that this time, but that's always something I can do later on to hold this in place a little bit better. I'm just wondering what to do on this top edge. I can tie wrap this to the poles here. I can tie wrap it at each end bay to the cross members, but it does leave the top a little bit wonky, so I'm not sure. Also, that the whole construction here is on a bit of an angle, and I think it would be better if I run this reasonably true to the cage here. So what I'll probably do is lift this up a little bit. I can use these bolts as a guide. In fact, I could fit a run of fencing wire from end to end here using these bolts as anchor points, tension that up nicely, and yeah, that's not a bad idea. That will give me something solid to pin the top of this mesh to. I think I'm going to do that. Well, as it happens, I found some coils of old fencing wire in the garage, and I think this must have been left over from our original fence. The guy who fitted it obviously left it here. Now I expect I've got some barrel strainers somewhere, but I think at this end maybe I'll just wrap that around. I mean, this is pretty tough old stuff, but I expect I'll be able to wrap it round to fix it here. Get that out of the way. Right, that's not going anywhere. I was thinking about attaching it to the actual bolts themselves, but I think it's probably just as well to wrap around the post here. Yeah, I think that'll be fine. Well, as you can probably tell, I'm just improvising here, trying to use whatever I've got to hand. I found a couple of whacking great barrel strainers in the shed. These are M10s, rather over the top for this job. I'm sure I could have used an M6, or that would have been fine, or an 8 would have been more than enough. For these chunky old fellas, they'll do the job all right. I've got 2 of those, so I can use those on either side, which is ideal. Again, I'm just going to wrap the wire through one of these ends. Yep, that will do nicely. Need to do the same on the other end. I'll form a loop with that one, and then I can tension this up. I hope there's not too much wind noise on the recording. There is a bit of a bitter wind today, so I hope that's not causing too much trouble. Right, so I got this wire attached in the same way up the other end. I'm just going to figure out where I want to make the loop. So I've unwound this to the maximum extent. And I want to pull this reasonably tight here. I'm not going to get it very tight, this is really stiff wire. But let's see, about there. If this is too loose to start with, then there won't be enough travel on the strainer in order to tighten it up. So it's the only thing I'm concerned with here. Now I need a pair of pliers. Right, let's see whether I got that right. Close enough, I think. Yes. Right. Wind it the right way. That's not the right way. There we go. Running out of travel. I did not get that right. I'll have to remake that. So I've shortened this wire a bit now, and hopefully this will work. Oh, okay, that is short. It's as much as I'm going to get there. Yes, I don't think I can get it much tighter than that, so hopefully this will be okay. If not, I'm going to need a second pair of hands. Just pulling it at the same time as trying to slip that on there is a little bit tricky. Oh no, that's going to be great. I don't need to overly tighten it. What I do need to do though is pull that in a little bit. The whole frame is a little bit wonky, the ground's not flat. I'm sure I didn't put it up entirely accurately. I dare say I tried, but where I was driving in the post that the frame sit on, this ground is so full of stones, not a chance of getting them exactly where I want them. So it's all a little bit, as my wife would say, Vinksen Vonksen. It's an excellent Finnish word that describes the degree of wonkiness of this frame. But what I do here, I think, is just put a tie wrap around this, hold it in place, and yeah, that will just keep it up tight to the frame, and then hopefully this will provide something good that I can fix the mesh to. Doesn't look too bad. I think that is probably tight enough. Yeah, I think that will do. Tie wraps. So on the back of this coach bolt there's a nut. Just giving that a squirt of WD-40. It's a little bit stiff, but I'll unwind that a little bit. Oh, there we go. That's got it. Perfect. And I can catch the cable behind the coach bolt there. That's got it. Just to stop this falling down, and then I'll clamp it in place with a with the tie wrap. Bit Heath Robinson, but I think it will hold in place all right. There you go, not bad. So I've just caught these temporarily on the 4 inner posts just to hold the mesh roughly in place. In all likelihood, I will need to make some adjustment here as I start pinning the mesh in place from one end, because there's some sort of bulges in it, but I'll run along this and pin this, I don't know, maybe every 8 to 10 inches or so, and that should be more than adequate to hold this in place. Once I've got the top pinned, I can go along and nail the bottom, and it's all a little bit wonky along the base, because of course the ground isn't level. However, there's plenty of overlap down there to fix this wire, so that looks pretty good for now. What I might do is start from this post, just run to the end and then tighten it up from the other direction. That is not bad now. I can get something around this post here as well. So I should be able to come over this frame now with some soft mesh, some ordinary bird mesh, and clip it along somewhere onto this, and that'll keep the birds out. So just need to do this all the way along. I should have got some really short tie wraps for this. That is a bit wasteful, but this is all I've got at the moment. So I've got this clipped on both sides now. Before I can deal with the ends, I've got to get the sides fixed at the bottom so I can wrap the corners around properly. Now, I've used tie wraps here, but of course there is actually a proper clip for this purpose. It's a small round piece of steel, and there's a tool you can use to sort of just clip fencing to a fencing wire, but I don't have the clips and I don't have the tool either, so that's not going to work for me here, not while I'm in improvisation mode. Similarly, I don't have batten to use on the bottom. If I did, I would probably clamp this mesh between the baseboards and the batten, and that would be great. I do have, though, some offcuts of timber, little bits of board that we were using when we redid some of the borders last year. So I've still got more of those to do actually, but that job's going to have to wait. But I could use a few of these bits of timber and screw those up against the baseboards and trap this, not everywhere, but maybe at every post I could do that. And then in between, I don't know if this will show up, I've got these little staples. They're probably just about big enough, and it'll cause me a few sore thumbs, I expect, but I can go along and just tap a few of those in just to tack this into place. It's not really doing much, it's only got to keep the birds out. At the moment it wouldn't do that because it's sticking out too far, but a few staples and a few of these boards strategically placed, and that should be fine. Right, so screws and a little bit of timber. So I want to make some clearance holes in this. We're going to have a proper clearance hole. screws do not pull up tight, so let's have a little look. Yeah, that's just over the diameter of the thread there, so that's perfect. I think just 4 holes to start with. I can always add more screws later. Now it would be handy if I didn't center this exactly where I'm going to cut any wires, so let's just line that up. This is not precision engineering. Yeah, that is fine. Because there's a nice clearance hole, when I wind that screw in, that will actually pull up nice and tight. I might actually get a slightly longer screw than that. The boards on this side, I think they're only an inch. On the other side, they're 2 inches, so I've got more room to play with. So I think on that side, I'll get a slightly longer screw than that. Yeah, that's going to be perfect. So very often I would be drilling pilot holes into the timber I'm going to fix into, but not today. It's some pretty soft wood, that, so I think it'll be fine without. So this wire overlaps a suitable amount, more in some places, less in others. But if I screw that in there, it's going to clamp this mesh very nicely. Yeah. And that's not going to go anywhere. Yeah, that's great. So I'll do that at every post, and then in between I'll just pin this down with the little staples. It's not going to be perfect. There are sort of bumps and lumps in this stuff, and it won't lie perfectly flat. I don't expect that edge is perfectly straight along the top, so, but it'll be fine as long as a bird can't get under it. That's the main thing. Right, it's pretty cold, but the gloves have got to come off. My fat fingers are getting in the way of these things. So let's have a little look. If I grip that over one of these joints, that's probably the best idea. Ow. Let's have a look. Oh, that's got a good grip. It's just big enough. If I was buying these for the purpose, I would probably get something a little bit more substantial, but that's what I've got in the shed, so that's what I'm going to use, at least for now. And I don't need that many of them just to pin this back and stop these bulges. Well, I'm slowly making progress on this, just doing a little bit every now and then. I've got both sides done now. It's all strapped up to the straining wire. Along the bottom, I've fixed some bits of board in various places, and then we've tacked along the bottom edge of the mesh with the staples. And actually, rooting around in the garage, I managed to find some larger staples, and they're doing, of course, a much better job. This is pretty secure down there now, so I'm very happy with that. I've done a similar thing across the end. I've got a smaller barrel strainer on there. That I didn't have any of these whacking great big fellas left, but it's just enough to do that job. You need a certain amount of travel on it. It's not to do really with the strength of the strainer. It's just how much travel you've got. If you're using soft cables, the sort of thing that I've used to tie up the fruit trees, then it's a lot easier, because of course you can pull those really very tight, so you've got the whole travel of that strainer to keep them together. Whereas on this stuff, you can't pull it quite straight enough, so you need quite a lot of travel on the strainer in order to pull this straight. So yeah, it's a little bit tricky working with that, especially with just the one pair of hands. I will need a second pair of hands for the next stage though. So across the back here I've got, well, it's a rather wrinkly piece of material, but it's all fixed along the bottom exactly the same way. I've got some wooden blocks in 4 places, and then I've stapled the bottom edge. I've cut this at a funny angle so that in due course I will be able to wrap this around the side and then clip this to the other mesh, and that's going to make a good job of this corner. It's going to be completely covered. Nothing's going to be able to sneak in that way. So I've just pinned this in a couple of places to this top wire, because I want to get another sheet of this mesh on the back here, so the back face will be completely covered with wire mesh. I think I'll do the same at the front, although of course I've got to make some sort of door in that, and actually there's very little width there for a door, so it'll be a narrow one. I'll have to breathe in and crab my way through it sideways, but never mind. That's just the physical realities of the space at that end. But I can get a second sheet of this. The height works out just about perfect, so it'll overlap a couple of inches with this one, and I'll be able to fold it round the corners of these posts, and then tie wrap it in place, and that will be a pretty permanent job on this end. And then the final part, it would be to just cover the top. So that'll be a bit tricky. I have to get some ladders out for that. That'll be a bit of fun, but it should be reasonably easy to cover that and then overlap with the wire mesh and fix the soft stuff to the wire. Hope so anyway, that's the idea. So the next job is to get just a bit of a hand here holding up this sheet while I fix to one of the bars. Once I've got a couple of clips in place, it'll be easy enough. Right. So here you can see one of the blocks that we fixed in. This is clamping the mesh really well. And then I've got these big staples running along the bottom. There's still some wrinkles in this, but it doesn't matter. This is only a fruit cage. It's only cosmetic. So I've got this top piece fixed in place now. It's tie wrapped to the bottom piece and that straining wire. It's attached to this cross member here, and a couple of clips on the vertical piece. So this is actually pretty solid, so I'm very happy with that. Now I just need to cut the excess away here, following the shape of the top of the tunnel, and then I can bend this mesh around the post to make sure that there are no gaps left there. So just decide how much of this I want to keep. Of course you can cut this stuff with a disc if you want, that's a bit quicker, but I don't like using those unless I have to. So I'm just wrapping this mesh around the post. Of course I could cut it along here and just tie wrap it in place, but this makes it really secure, and I think it does a reasonable job of finishing this off. I need to put a few more clips in place, but it's not looking too bad on this side, and then I've got to do the same on the other side. When I get down to the mesh sides, I'm just wrapping this round flat onto these sides and then just putting the tie wraps in various places just to hold that together, and that is really solid here. Forms a really good corner, and of course nothing can get in through these corners, and that's great. Down at the base there's a little bit of shaping here, and that's wrapped round, and both layers there are impenetrable. So yeah, it wraps round and it's stapled to the wood all over the place and then clipped onto the side, so there are no gaps here where anything can go, and even if something went through one of these layers, the other one is solid there as well. So this is, I think, at least from a functional perspective, if not an aesthetic one, a reasonably sound job. So I finally feel like I'm actually making some progress in converting our old polytunnel frame into the fruit cage, and it'll be really nice this year if the birds don't steal any of our berries. Early days for the crops in here, but I am expecting crops on the blueberries and at least something on the currant bushes. So we may also get fruit on our young cherry plants that are up this side. Hopefully, if we do, they won't be stolen this year, so that will be great. I think I will come back with part 2 of this video when I've made some progress on the front. So I need to get a couple of doorposts in, I need to get a board along the base, and of course I need to knock up a lightweight door. I have to see what materials I've got around, but I'm sure I've got something I can use for that purpose. But anyway, that will be all for this video. Thanks ever so much for watching, and bye for now.